Hi there, I'm Angela. Welcome to the channel or welcome back. In today's video, I'm doing part 2 of my sew with me for my Vogue V9246 pants. If you were here with me for the first part where I did pattern adjustments and things like that, I'm so glad that you came back. And if you're kind of just jumping in now, I'm also so glad that you're here. Today I'm going to be cutting out the pieces. So please feel free to stick around, hang out with me while I do that, and maybe I'll keep you company while you're hanging out in your sewing room. So let's go ahead and jump in. So as I mentioned, today I'm going to be cutting out the pieces. There's just 3 pieces for these pants: the front, the back, and the waistband. And I am using, not sure how well you can see this, this is sort of like a dark chocolate brown ponte knit that I got from Stylish Fabric. I'll put a link to them, in the description box below. And when I ordered this fabric, it was last year, I did go ahead and get 5 yards of it because I am planning to also make the jacket out of the same fabric. So what I think I'm going to do before I even start pinning my pieces, and yes, I am still a pin and scissors girl. The only time that I really ever use a rotary cutter is when I'm cutting out for quilting and then I have a ruler. I found that I haven't quite mastered like keeping the oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank, the rotary cutter steady if I don't have like a ruler that I'm holding it up against. So I still use pen and scissors when I'm cutting out for garments. So in order to kind of take the pressure off of the fabric, because I've got, let's see if I can adjust this, it is kind of all hanging down and it's pulled up on the floor here. And I think that that can put a lot of like a strain on the fabric, like make it kind of pull towards the floor. So I don't want it to skew the fabric at all. So what I think I'm going to do is to go ahead and just cut the fabric kind of like so. And then like all this that I'm not using today, I can put aside and I'll just have the smaller piece for the pants today. So let's start with that. And this is some very, very nice ponte. I haven't worked with ponte very frequently, maybe just one other time, but I feel like I can feel it. It's a good quality. And I had previously laid my pieces out here, as you can see, just to make sure that they were going to fit before I kind of whacked off the rest of the fabric. But what I want to do before I even pin these down is to make sure that my fabric is folded over properly, that it's not twisted or askew in any way. So I'm just going to put those aside and make sure that this is hanging right. And I don't know how you guys do this, but the way that I do it is I hold it up just like that and making sure that the selvages meet, and I can look at the bottom when I'm holding it up, what's the bottom where it's folded up, and get an idea if it's like twisted or if it's if it's not folded up perfectly. I'm not explaining this very well. Like if one side's kind of further than the other and then you can see ripples in it, I don't think that made much sense. I hope it did. I'll try to explain it better if you guys have questions about that. And then it looked pretty good holding it up. I'm sure there's definitely like a proper way to do that. That's just kind of how I do it. And I had pre-washed and dried this fabric, and it was full. And then once I took it out of the dryer, it had been folded up for a while, so I can kind of see the fold lines there. And I'm thinking that I might want to go ahead and run an iron over this. I can definitely see actual wrinkles right there. So I'm going to do that. And in my last video, one of you guys had asked about my ironing mat. This is, I think it's like a 2-foot by 4-foot mat that you can set on a, on a tabletop or something to make a nice big ironing surface. I don't really have enough room in my sewing room for a stand-up ironing board. So I've used this for quite a long time now. So I'm going to slip this under my fabric, hopefully without messing up my straightening that I just did. And what I'll probably do is just kind of slide the mat further and further down to get the whole piece ironed. And while we're waiting for the iron to heat up, in case you're wondering, this Ponte is rayon nylon spandex blend. I think it's 70% rayon, 25% nylon, and 5% spandex. Pretty sure I got that right. And also, if you're wondering about my table here, this table has become so valuable to me. It wasn't crazy expensive. I can kind of give you an idea of how we put this together, we being my husband and I. So this is just a 4x6 sheet of plywood. And I did get like the nicer grade of plywood just because I'm, going to be having fabric on here. So it was relatively smooth. Although I did do, even sanding all across the top and coat it with a matte polyurethane just to make sure I have extra smooth surface here. Sanded the edges, polyurethane those to keep fabric from snagging on it. And then for the legs, these are just those IKEA legs. They might be the Olaf legs. I'll put a link to those below in case you're wondering about those. I forget how much I paid for the piece of plywood. It might have been like $50 or something like that. I'm just thankful I have a room that's big enough to accommodate this table, even though it kind of takes up most of the room. It's fine. It's so worth it to have such a nice big workspace. So just trying to chat while I'm waiting for the iron to kind of heat up. And I'm wondering if this maybe shouldn't be on the hottest setting. I'm going to turn it down just a little bit. So it's going to need maybe another minute to kind of cool off a bit. And I have to say that I am not the world's best ironer, if that's a word. Many times I don't pay enough attention to the requirements of the fabric when I'm ironing, and I end up with kind of botched fabric. Not often, but I'm trying to get better. So I think what might be easier if I just kind of slide this down a little bit. There we go. And similarly, I have a hard time paying attention to the washing and drying requirements of fabric too. Oh, I try to stay away from anything that's dry clean only just because I cannot afford to send things to the dry cleaner. Not to mention just the headache of having to take it there, pick it up when our lives are so busy already. And oftentimes I've found that just because something says dry clean only, you might be able to get away with hand washing and line drying it. So I always kind of test the waters with that. All right, I think we're good here. So I am going to put my fabric back on the table. My desk is over here on this side, in case you're wondering what that chair is there for. All right, pull this out. Yeah, this mat is so nice. It's a lot bigger size than the one I was previously using, so I love it. This is the only one I really use, even though I have my little one that's maybe 2x3 or something like that. And unless I'm needing my whole table for a cutting out process, I usually just keep that mat right on my cutting table, like on one side of it or at the end of it down there. And it stays there, so it's always ready to go. So I am going to loosely lay my pieces on here. And since this fabric it's not directional, it doesn't have a nap, kind of can maximize my space by turning my pants pieces in opposite directions. I love it when I can do that. It's a good way to save fabric. And when I'm placing pieces on my fabric, I usually just at first kind of eyeball it to make sure the grain line is straight in line with the fabric. And then I'll oftentimes actually measure. All right, so I had this on there perfectly before. Now I'm like, they're not fitting. Moment of panic. I'm sure they'll fit. So with this, I am going to go ahead and just measure the grain line. So for this piece, I'll measure the grain line to the fold. And on this piece, I'll measure the grain line to the selvage edge of the fabric. I don't do this every time. It's just kind of situational. I think I've gotten this one pretty good. Yeah, not quite. Do you guys do this too, or just eyeball it? I feel like that's pretty good. Last year I made a long sleeve pajama top, and I think the fabric was it was a very thin rayon knit, and it was hard to pin down, and it wouldn't stay put. And I didn't do a good job of lining up the grain lines, and now the sleeves kind of are twisty, and it drives me nuts. So trying to get better about such things. And I know that this pinning takes a lot longer than using pattern weights and a rotary cutter. I just can't seem to master using a rotary cutter without a ruler there as my guide. And I'm sure it probably, it's like everything. You just need to practice. Do it. The more you do it, the better and you'll get, and the faster you'll get. Before I get too much further with pinning this piece, I'm going to make sure that my other piece fits in nicely, just in case I have to wiggle them around a little bit more. Now that you guys, if you've been coming to my channel for a little while, you probably have heard me say that I am a pretty slow sewist. Now you're probably understanding why that is. In fact, I think I am going to have to shift the pieces a little bit. I should have done a better job to start with. It's okay. I try to not put like time requirements on myself too much, because then it just becomes like really stressful. And it kind of, I always want it to remain, an enjoyable activity. In fact, I'm thinking that I might have had them this other way, although I'm not sure that that matters. I know I had this. Don't you hate that when you have something perfect and then you mess around a little bit and you lose it? So I got them pretty much Tetrised in there, and I'm coming pretty close to the selvage edge, but I think I'll be okay there. And after last week's video where I made my pattern adjustments, I was going to go ahead and do the cutting and sewing, and realized I did not have any thread that was even close to this dark of a brown. So I had to make a trip to Joann's, which is, never a hardship. And then we ended up spending the weekend with my mom. She just moved into a new place. So we kind of, helped her get settled in, get things arranged and things like that. It was good to see her. She lives about 2 hours drive away from me. Which is not, terrible. You can easily, it's a good overnight trip. And sometimes we'll go there just for the day. It just means, 4 hours of driving during the day, which would prefer to not have to do, but it's not that bad. And then my little waistband piece here, I have made sure to have room for that down at the end. The thing with that is that I'm going to hold off on cutting that out until I get these front and back basted together. Just to, I know there might be some fitting adjustments that need to happen, so I don't want to cut the waistband out until I do that. So I think we're good, and I'm going to go ahead and start cutting, and I will time lapse this, not to bore you guys to tears. And I'm realizing that you're a little far away from the table here. Sorry about that. I'm going to move you up a little closer there. Right, so I got my pieces cut out, and now I'm just going to do the markings. Sometimes my old eyes, if the pieces are the pattern pieces, I'm looking at the back side of the print, the markings disappear. I'm sure that's just my eyes getting older. So as I flip this one, I want to make sure I get it smoothed out and flat again, that I didn't bunch anything up. Like, I'm not even seeing, you know why I'm not seeing a marking? Because this is where I made my adjustments. And I guess I did not transfer my marking. It's okay, be fine. So we're good there. And then this is the front. I'll have to remember that the piece with the notch is the front. And I've got a dart here. And I haven't looked at this fabric closely enough yet to see if there is a front or a right side and a wrong side. So I'm going to take a peek now just to see if there is, or I think that there is. I've heard that when fabrics are on the bolt, generally the inside of the fold is usually the front. I don't know if that's true or not, just something that I heard. But since I've washed this one and dried it and refolded it, it's all out of whack now. And if it's so close that I can't even tell, like, I think the inside of the fold looks more like a front side of the fabric. So I'm going to mark that on this piece just in the seam allowance. But I need my white pencil, not a regular pencil. This is just in case I forget that I decided the inside of the fold is the front. I'll have it at least on one of the pieces. And then I'll also use my pencil to mark the point of my dart there. I'm going to bring this pencil in closer and show you guys what I use. I hope that that is showing up. It's called Bohin France, although I'm sure there's like a nice French pronunciation of that I am not getting right. But it's just like a mechanical pencil, and it actually does have an eraser, but it has like white pencil lead, and you can buy the replacements. So it comes in really handy when I'm working with dark colored fabrics. If I'm working with the light fabric, I do have some colored chalk, another mechanical pencil that has colored chalks in it, but they're not thin like this. That's what I love about this one, that the lead is so thin. It makes fine markings. And with that other one, the leads are much fatter, like, I don't know, 5 times thicker than this lead maybe, or maybe more, which gets a little awkward. So since I decided that the inside of the fold is going to be the right side of the fabric, what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring this piece in closer. I feel like you guys are so far away. All right, maybe that's better. Or maybe turn it around. Make sure it's smoothed. So I've just put a pin in there where the point of the dart is. And the way that I do this, I know there's many ways of marking, making marks on your fabric or marking certain, features. I just stick a pin right through the center of the dot that marks the end of the dart, where that little circle is. Stick the pin straight through till I'm all the way through, and then kind of slide it in, and then take the surrounding pins out. Of course, if you're using pattern weights, you don't have to deal with that. What I need is to be able to pull the pattern piece back enough to see where that pin went in. I don't know if you guys can see that, but I don't want to pull the pin out. So I'll just use my white chalk pencil there to mark that. Flip the pattern piece, keeping that pin in place the whole time. Then I flip it over, and I can see where the pin went through the fabric here. And then I just make a mark there. And that's how I do that. And all the other marks have been made, which are really only just notches cut out, and the ends of the dart here at the top of the waistband. I think that's it. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the rest of my pins out. Even though I've taken the pins off of my pieces and detached them from the fabric, I like to, for at least for now, to keep them with those pieces. Even if I, fold them up for the time being, I still kind of keep them together, just in case. I found that to be helpful. So all the pieces are cut out now. I think I might just kind of end it here for today to keep these segments kind of short. I know that part 1 went kind of long when I was doing the pattern adjustments. So look towards the end of the week, or maybe the weekend, for part 3, which will be the actual sewing the pieces together, doing some fitting, any fine tuning that needs to happen, and stitching up finishing it. I hope you found this interesting. Thanks for hanging out with me today while I kind of get in another little chunk of sewing. And I hope that you'll tune in next time. We can see how these pants are coming along, and I will talk to you then. Bye.